He thought it was just another delivery. A pizza, an address, a tip. He never imagined that walking up to that mansion's door would shatter his anonymous world and connect him to a past he'd tried to forget. This is the story of a single father, a billionaire's whispered secret, and the night a humble pizza delivery man discovered that the life he saved years ago was about to save him right back. Tonight, that delivery man is Michael Shaw, a 34-year-old single father working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. The estate belongs to tech billionaire Robert Thorne, and the little girl's whispered words are about to unravel a secret buried for 5 years, forcing one man to confront a past he left on the side of a rainy highway, and another to face a debt he never knew he owed. What happens next is a story about invisible heroes, the echoes of a single choice, and the moment a forgotten good deed steps out of the rain and knocks on your door. To understand the shock of that moment at the mansion, you have to understand the life Michael Shaw was living. A life measured in miles on a delivery odometer, in late fees narrowly avoided, in the silent hope that his 7-year-old son, Ben, wouldn't notice how tired he always was. 5 nights a week, Michael traded his auto mechanic's uniform for a red polo shirt. The pizza gig was supposed to be temporary, a bridge after the shop downsized. 2 years later, it was a permanent anchor. His world was a 12-year-old sedan that smelled of pepperoni, a cramped apartment in a complex where the pool was always closed, and a relentless clock. Clock in at the garage by 7, clock out at 4, home by 4:30 to make Ben a snack, help with homework. Clock in at Pizza Palace by 6, deliver until 10, sometimes 11 if the orders were good, collapse, repeat. The math was simple and brutal. The mechanic job covered rent and utilities. The pizza job covered everything else: groceries, Ben's soccer fees, the never-ending car repairs on the very vehicle that was his livelihood. There was no column in his budget for emergencies or for memories. The accident from 5 years ago lived in that blank column, a ghost he couldn't afford to feed. It happened on State Route 8, a winding 2-lane highway known for being treacherous in the rain. Michael was 29, driving home from visiting a friend. It was past 10 at night, a downpour making the asphalt a black mirror. He saw the taillights first, then the shape. A car had hydroplaned, skidded across the center line, and slammed into a guardrail before rolling onto its roof in the opposite ditch. He didn't think. He pulled over, hazards on, and ran across the highway. The car was a small sedan, crushed and silent except for the hiss of steam and the relentless drum of rain. The driver's side was pinned against the earth. He went to the passenger side, the windows blown out, and saw her. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, still strapped in her car seat, which was now suspended from the roof. She was conscious, crying softly, a trickle of blood on her forehead. A woman, her mother, was slumped unconscious in the front seat, the airbag deployed. Michael talked to the girl, his voice calm in a way he didn't feel. He told her his name, that help was coming, that she was being so brave. With his bare hands, he pulled at the mangled door frame until it gave enough for him to wedge himself inside. He couldn't get the mother out, but he managed to unhook the car seat. He carried the girl, seat and all, back across the highway to the relative safety of his own car, wrapping her in his jacket. He called 911, gave the mile marker, stayed with her until the first patrol car's lights cut through the gloom. He gave his statement to a paramedic, pointed to the wreck. And then, as more official vehicles arrived, he simply left. He had to be at work in 7 hours. He didn't leave his name. The next day he scoured the local news. A brief article, a single-car accident, 2 females transporting to County General, conditions unknown, no follow-up. He told himself they were okay, he had to. He boxed the memory up, the smell of spilled coolant and rain, the weight of the car seat in his arms, the girl's wide, trusting eyes, and buried it under the daily grind of survival. A thing that happened, not a thing he was. Years passed, he met Sarah, they had Ben. It was good until it wasn't. Sarah left when Ben was 4, seeking a life with less struggle, a sentiment Michael understood even as it gutted him. So his world shrank again, to 2 jobs and 1 small boy who was his entire reason for breathing. Which is why on that particular Thursday night, the last thing on Michael's mind was ancient history. He was thinking about the squeak in his front brake pads he couldn't afford to fix, and about the large, complicated order that had just printed out. 3 specialty pizzas, wings, sodas, going to an address in the Crestwood Estates. the rich part of town, the one with the gatehouse. A $20 tip was already pre-added to the ticket. This was the kind of order that made the night worthwhile. He loaded the hot bags into his passenger seat. The rain was starting again, a cold drizzle that glittered in his headlights. He drove through the familiar streets of his neighborhood, past the strip malls and agging subdivisions until the scenery changed. The sidewalks disappeared, the lots grew wider, the trees were taller and perfectly manicured. He reached the stone pillars of Crestwood. The guard, expecting him, waved him through with a bored nod. The Thorns' home wasn't just a house. It was a compound of modern glass and sharp angles, lit up against the night sky like a spaceship that had landed gently among the oaks. Michael felt a familiar pang, the quiet shame of his stained polo and his old car as he pulled up the sweeping driveway. He grabbed the stacked order, the warmth of the boxes a comfort against the chill, and made his way to the towering front door. He took a breath, rang the bell. He heard the chime echo inside. This was just a transaction, a handoff, a thank you, maybe the promise of a cash tip on top of the electronic one. He adjusted his grip on the boxes, put on his standard polite smile. The door opened, not by a butler, but by a man in his 50s with sharp, assessing eyes and silver hair, Robert Thorn. And at his side, a blonde girl of about 8, holding his hand. Michael's smile tightened, professional. Delivery for Thorn. The man didn't reach for the pizzas. He just stared, his gaze intense, traveling over Michael's face as if deciphering a code. The little girl tugged on her father's sleeve, her own eyes wide and unblinking. She rose on her tiptoes, her small hand cupped around her father's ear. She whispered. Time didn't stop, it fractured. Michael saw the man's expression change. The intense stare melted into something else, shock, then a dawning, profound recognition. The billionaire looked from his daughter's earnest face back to Michael, the pizza guy standing in the rain. And Robert Thorn said the words that would tear Michael Shaw's carefully constructed world in two. My God, it's you. Michael stood frozen on the doorstep, the pizza boxes growing heavy in his hands. I'm sorry, was all he could manage, his delivery script utterly useless. The rain dotted his shoulders. Robert Thorn stepped back, holding the door wide open. Please, come inside. It wasn't a request. It was an order, softened by something that looked like awe. Michael's instincts screamed, get the signature, take the money, leave. But the man's expression, the girl's unwavering gaze, it rooted him to the spot. He mumbled something about his shoes being wet, but Thorn just waved it away. It doesn't matter, none of that matters. Michael stepped across the threshold into another universe. The foyer soared 2 stories high, dominated by a minimalist sculpture that probably cost more than he'd make in a decade. The air was warm, smelling of lemon polish and something floral. He felt like a stain on the perfect, polished concrete floor. The little girl, still holding her father's hand, kept staring at him. You're the man from the car, she said, her voice clear and certain. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. The car, the rain, the little girl in the upside-down car seat. The memory he'd locked away came flooding back, not as a hazy recollection, but in sharp, sensory detail. The smell of the airbags, the sound of her crying, the weight of the car seat in his arms. Chloe, this is the man who helped you and Mommy, Thorn said, his voice thick. He looked at Michael, and for the first time the billionaire facade fully cracked. 5 years. We've been looking for you for 5 years. Michael's mind reeled. Looking for me? I didn't leave my name. I didn't think. We know, Thorn said, getting him gently from the foyer into a vast living room where a fire crackled in a granite fireplace. The police report said an unknown male witness assisted at the scene and departed before identification could be obtained. That was it. You were a ghost. He took the pizza boxes from Michael's numb hands and set them on a colossal marble coffee table. The absurdity of 3 pepperoni pizzas sitting in the center of this room was not lost on anyone. Thorn gestured for Michael to sit on a sofa that felt like a cloud. Chloe climbed up next to her father, never taking her eyes off Michael. Chloe was 3, Thorn began, his gaze fixed on the fire. My wife Elena was driving her home from a ballet recital, that stretch of road, the rain, the car hydroplaned. He paused, collecting himself. Elena suffered a traumatic brain injury. She was in a coma for 6 weeks. She's in a long-term care facility now. Recovery has been slow. Michael felt the blood drain from his face. He'd saved the child, but he'd always assumed, hoped, the mother had recovered. The guilt was instantaneous and crushing. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." Chloe had a concussion, a broken arm, Thorne continued, putting an arm around his daughter. But she was lucid enough, even in the ambulance, to talk about the man who got her out. The man in a red shirt who talked to her, who carried her, who stayed with her. She called you her angel. He looked at Michael, eyes glistening. "For months she drew pictures of you, a man with a red shirt. We showed them to the police. They had nothing to go on. As my company grew, I used resources. Private investigators, database searches, even a public appeal once. Nothing, you had vanished." Chloe finally spoke up again. "Daddy said we had to find you to say thank you and to give you your jacket back." Michael blinked. "My jacket." Thorne stood and walked to a built-in cabinet. He opened it and pulled out a familiar, faded blue windbreaker. It was clean, neatly folded. Michael hadn't even realized he'd left it that night. He'd been so focused on the girl, he must have wrapped it around her and forgotten. "It was the only tangible piece of evidence we had," Thorne said, holding it out. "No labels, nothing, but Chloe held onto it in the hospital. She wouldn't let it go." Michael took the jacket, a relic from a past life. The fabric brought it all back. He looked at Chloe. "You remember that?" She nodded solemnly. "You told me the rain was just the sky giving the flowers a drink, and you said I was very brave." She then did something that shattered the last of Michael's composure. She got off the couch, walked over to him, and wrapped her small arms around his neck in a silent hug. He sat there stiff, his own arms at his sides, overwhelmed by the scent of her shampoo and the profound, awful weight of this little girl's gratitude. When she let go and returned to her father, Thorne's expression had shifted again. The awe was now mixed with a fierce, determined intensity. "Michael Shaw," he said, as if testing the name. "We ran your license plate from the gatehouse camera the moment you left. I know about your son, Ben. I know about the 2 jobs. I know about the foreclosure notice on your apartment complex last year." A cold wave of violation washed over Michael. You looked me up in the last 10 minutes." "In the last 5, Thorne said, no apology in his voice. "When you have the resources I do, information is rapid. I'm not telling you this to intimidate you. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something. You saved my entire world." He gestured to Chloe. "Without you, I would have lost everything that night. Instead, I have my daughter. I have hope for my wife. I have a debt that cannot be calculated." Michael shook his head, standing up, needing to move. "There's no debt. Anyone would have done it." "But anyone didn't," Thorne countered, rising to meet him. "According to the police report, several cars passed before you stopped. You stopped. You went into that ditch. You got her out. You stayed. That wasn't anyone. That was you." He took a step closer. "I am a man who builds fortunes on solving problems. You are a problem I have been trying to solve for 5 years, and now I have, so here is the solution." Michael braced himself, expecting a check, a grand, theatrical gesture that would make him feel even smaller. "I am offering you a job," Thorne said, "a real one, at Thorne Solutions. My security and logistics division manages a fleet of vehicles. They need a lead mechanic with diagnostic skills. The salary is 3 times what you're currently making between both jobs, with full benefits for you and your son. It's day hours, no nights, no weekends." The air left Michael's lungs. It wasn't a handout. It was a job, a real, legitimate, career-level job. The kind of offer that could change everything. That could mean seeing Ben before bedtime. That could mean fixing his own car. That could mean breathing without the constant, grinding pressure. "Why?" the word escaped before he could filter it. "You don't know me. I'm just a mechanic." "You're the man who saved my daughter," Thorne said simply. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character under pressure. The rest, wrenches, diagnostics, managing a team that can be assessed. I'm confident. The head of the division will interview you tomorrow at 9 a.m. He pulled a business card from his pocket and wrote an address on the back. "This is the facility. Just show up." Michael took the card, the thick stock foreign in his fingers. His mind was a hurricane of conflict. Pride screamed to refuse, to walk away, to not be bought. Desperation, the quiet, tired voice that governed his life, whispered that this was the lifeline he'd been praying for Ben. I have to think," Michael stammered. "I have to get back to my shift." "Of course," Thorne said. his demeanor shifting back to the polite, in-control billionaire. He walked Michael to the door, Chloe trailing behind. As Michael stepped back out into the drizzle, Thorne placed a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you decide, Michael Shaw, thank you. From the bottom of my life, thank you." The door closed softly, leaving Michael alone in the cool night, holding a business card and a 5-year-old jacket. He got into his car, the smell of pizza now cloying. He sat there for a full 5 minutes, engine off, watching the rain slide down his windshield, the mansion's lights glowing behind him. He didn't go back to finish his shift. He called his manager, mumbled something about a family emergency, and drove home in a daze. The normal sights of his neighborhood, the flickering streetlight, the pothole he always swerved to avoid, looked different, like a film set he was about to leave. Ben was asleep on the couch, a cartoon still playing on the TV. Michael's sister, Lisa, who watched Ben on late nights, was dozing in the armchair. She woke as he came in. "You're early, everything okay?" "Yeah," Michael said, his voice distant. "Just slow night." He paid her, thanked her, and she left. He carried Ben to his small bed, tucking him in. He looked at his son's peaceful face, the faint freckles across his nose. The offer wasn't just for him, it was for this, for stability, for a future. He pulled the business card from his pocket. THORNESOLUTIONS, Logistics Campus. The interview was in 12 hours. He thought about putting on his one good shirt, the slightly tight one. He thought about what he would even say. And then a new, chilling thought occurred to him. Robert Thorne found him in an evening. He knew about Ben, about the foreclosure. What else did he know? What else would he expect in return? Gratitude was one thing, but a billionaire's sense of debt that felt like a gilded cage waiting to snap shut. He had a choice: stay in the struggle he knew, or step into a new life offered by a man who could see every part of him with the click of a mouse. The angel from the roadside accident was about to find out that being seen, after years of being invisible, was the most terrifying thing of all. He went to the interview. Of course he went. Dressed in his best shirt, with a knot of anxiety in his stomach so tight he could barely breathe, Michael Shaw presented himself at the gleaming Thorne Solutions Logistics Campus at 8:55 the next morning. The interview was with a woman named Diane Carter, the head of fleet operations. She was brisk, professional, and to Michael's immense relief, she asked him about torque specs and diagnostic software, not about rainy highways. For an hour, he was just a mechanic talking to another professional. He left feeling a cautious, unfamiliar spark of confidence. By 3 that afternoon, his personal email dinged with an offer letter. The salary was exactly what Thorne had said. The benefits package included dental. Michael stared at the words on his cracked phone screen, sitting in his car outside the auto shop where he still had a shift in 30 minutes. He accepted the offer with a trembling thumb. He gave notice at both jobs. His manager at the garage was disappointed but understanding. His boss at Pizza Palace was less so, docking his final check for the abandoned shift the night of the delivery. Michael let it go. He was moving toward light. The first 2 weeks at Thorne Solutions were a surreal blend of awe and imposter syndrome. His new team was skeptical at first, the guy from the boss's personal project, but Michael's quiet competence won them over. He fixed a persistent electrical gremlin in a delivery van that had stumped the previous mechanic for months. He organized the parts inventory. He showed up early, stayed late to learn the new diagnostic systems. For the first time in years, he used his brain for problem solving, not just survival. He picked Ben up from school every day at 3:15. They had dinner at a table, not in the car. It felt like someone had hit the unmute button on his life. But the other shoe was waiting to drop. It began with a phone call from a number he didn't recognize, a reporter from the city's biggest newspaper. "Mr. Shaw, we're doing a feature on local heroes and unsung acts of kindness. We understand you have an incredible story involving Robert Thorne and his family." Michael froze, mid-bite of a sandwich in the break room. I don't know what you're talking about." "Mr. Thorne's office gave us your contact information," the reporter said brightly. "They said you'd be happy to talk." He panicked. He said no comment and hung up. He immediately called the main number for Thorne's executive office, was put through to a polished-sounding assistant. Oh yes, Mr. Shaw. Mr. Thorne felt the story was an inspiring one, a bit of good news. He authorized a press release to a few select outlets. We assumed you'd be on board. Assumed, the word felt like a key turning in a lock he hadn't known was there. He was part of Thorne's narrative now, a piece of PR, the humble hero. He called Robert Thorne directly, a number he'd been given for any issues. Michael, Thorne answered, sounding pleased. How's the new position treating you? Fine, sir, the reporter who just called. Ah yes, the Chronicle piece. It will be tasteful, I assure you. It reflects well on everyone, shows the human side of the company. Chloe is excited to see her angel in the paper. Michael's protest died in his throat. How could he argue against a little girl's excitement? How could he demand his anonymity back when he'd accepted the job, the money, the rescue? The debt was being called in, not in dollars, but in exposure. I'd prefer to keep my private life private. Of course, Thorne said, his tone placating but firm. We'll keep the focus on the act itself, not your current circumstances. But Michael, people will find out anyway. This way, we control the story. The article came out 3 days later, a full-page spread in the Sunday lifestyle section. There was a photo of Chloe, now 8, holding a childhood drawing of a man in a red shirt. The headline read, Billionaire's 5-year search ends with pizza delivery, a story of gratitude that changed 2 lives. Michael was quoted sparingly, his words polished by the reporter into sound bites of modest heroism. His photo was a grainy, zoomed-in shot from his old mechanic shop ID badge. He looked tired and weary. The morning it published, his phone buzzed incessantly, old friends he hadn't heard from in years, distant relatives, a local TV news station wanting an interview. When he dropped Ben at school, a few parents looked at him differently. One mother came up and said, I saw the article, what an amazing thing you did. Ben beamed with pride. My dad's a hero, he told his friends. Michael smiled, but inside he felt a creeping violation. His past, his private act, was now public currency, and it was funding Thorne's inspiring narrative. Then came the online comments. Under the digital version of the article, the sentiment wasn't uniformly warm. Convenient how the billionaire just happens to find the guy and give him a cushy job, one read. Sounds like a PR stunt to offset those factory layoffs last quarter, said another. How much do you think the hero is getting paid to smile for the camera? A third thread devolved into speculation about Michael's life, digging up his apartment complex, his car, his divorce. The anonymity of the ditch was gone. He was exposed. At work, the dynamic shifted subtly. The respectful skepticism from his team curdled into a different kind of distance. Whispers in the break room, he's the charity case, got the job because he has a good sob story, not a good resume. He overheard one technician mutter, must be nice to have an in with the big boss. The work itself was still satisfying, but the social fabric around it was fraying. The real crisis hit on a Tuesday afternoon. Diane Carter called him into her office. Her face was grim. Michael closed the door. He did, his heart sinking. I've been asked to forward this to you. She turned her monitor. It was an email from the corporate legal department. The subject line, formal complaint regarding employee Michael Shaw, logistics fleet. What is this? Michael asked, his voice hollow. It seems a former colleague from your previous auto shop has come forward. They're alleging that you appropriated certain tools and proprietary diagnostic equipment when you left, that it constitutes theft. Michael felt the room tilt. That's insane. I didn't take anything. My toolbox is mine. I bought every tool in it. The shop owner knew that. I believe you, Diane said, but her expression was pained. Unfortunately, with the media spotlight on you and on Mr. Thorne's connection to you, legal has to treat this with extreme seriousness. They've opened an internal investigation. You're being placed on paid administrative leave, effective immediately. Paid leave. It sounded gentle, but it was a exile. This is because of the article, isn't it? Someone sees my name, sees Thorne, and decides to cause trouble. Possibly, Diane admitted. Or it could be a former co-worker with a grudge, seeing an opportunity. Either way, until this is resolved, you can't be on the premises. I'm sorry, Michael. He cleaned out his locker under the watchful eye of a security guard. a humiliation that burned. He drove home in the middle of the day, a feeling of sickening déjà vu washing over him. He was losing it. The dream job, the stability for Ben, it was slipping through his fingers, attacked from the shadows his new fame had created. That night, as he was trying to explain to Ben why Daddy was home early without worrying him, his phone rang. Robert Thorne. "Michael, I just heard. This is unacceptable." "Someone is lying," Michael said, the anger finally breaking through his shock. "I don't doubt it. My legal team is already on it. We will sue this former colleague for defamation if we have to. Your job is safe." The ferocity of Thorne's response was comforting, but also unsettling. It felt less like protection and more like possession. Thorne was defending his asset, his story. "Thank you," Michael forced out. "No thanks necessary, but Michael, this underscores why controlling the narrative is so important. The world is full of people who want to tear down good stories. We have to present a united front, which is why I've agreed to an interview tomorrow night. Live, on Channel 7's Nightly News. I want you there with me." The floor fell out from under Michael again. "A live interview? Sir, with all due respect, I can't. This investigation, it's not the right time." "It's the perfect time," Thorne insisted, his voice taking on that undeniable executive tone. "We go on together. I condemn these baseless allegations. We talk about the true meaning of character. We show them the unbreakable bond between our families. We end this speculation before it gains traction. For Chloe, for Ben, for your reputation." He was leveraging Michael's love for his son, just as he'd leveraged Chloe's memory. The gilded cage now had a television camera inside it. Michael felt trapped. If he refused, he looked guilty, ungrateful. He could jeopardize the legal help he desperately needed. If he agreed, he sold the last shred of his private self to Robert Thorne's public relations machine. "What time?" Michael asked, his voice a whisper of surrender. 8 p.m. I'll send a car for you at 7. Wear the suit from your interview." The line went dead. Michael sat in his dim living room, the weight of the coming performance already crushing him. He was no longer just a man who had done a good deed. He was a character in Robert Thorne's redemption story, a pawn in a corporate chess game, and a target for every jealous or cynical person who saw his rise. The invisible hero had become the center of a storm he never asked for, and the only lifeboat in sight was owned by the man who had thrown him into the raging water. The black car came for him at 7 o'clock sharp. Michael sat in the back, the suit Thorne had sent over feeling like a costume, the fabric too fine, the fit too perfect. He was being delivered to the studio, another package in the Billionaire's narrative. The green room was all nervous energy and bright lights. Robert Thorne was already there, being powdered by a makeup artist. He looked calm in command. He clasped Michael's shoulder. "Remember, we're telling a story of gratitude, of a bond forged in crisis. Keep it simple, keep it positive." The message was clear: stick to the script. They were led onto the set. The news anchor, a woman with a practiced, sympathetic smile, greeted them. The cameras were larger, more imposing than Michael had imagined. His heart hammered against his ribs. A countdown began in his ear. 5, 4, 3. The interview started with Thorne. He was masterful, speaking about the accident with controlled emotion, about the endless search, about the moment of recognition at his door. "It was," he said, looking sincerely into the camera, "the closing of a circle, a chance to finally thank the man who gave me back my daughter." Then the anchor turned to Michael. "Mr. Shaw, you've been called a hero. How does that sit with you?" Michael's mouth was dry. He saw the teleprompter, but the words weren't his. He thought of Ben, watching at home with his aunt. He thought of the suspicious looks at work, the online comments dissecting his life. He thought of the weight of that little girl's hug, a memory that was pure before it became a headline. "It's uncomfortable," Michael began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm not a hero. I was just a guy who stopped when he saw taillights in a ditch. What's heroic is what Chloe has done growing up, being strong after something so scary. What's heroic is Mr. Thorne's dedication to his wife's care every single day for 5 years." He was deviating, turning the spotlight away from himself. He saw a flicker of surprise, then approval in Thorne's eyes. Then the anchor asked the question they'd been told was coming. "Mr. Shaw, There are now allegations circulating about your conduct at a previous job. How do you respond to those, especially in light of this inspiring story? This was the moment. The prepared statement was about trust and character, provided by Thorne's PR team. Michael looked directly into the camera lens, imagining the former co-worker who'd made the claim, imagining everyone watching. "I didn't take anything that wasn't mine," he said, simple and flat. "My toolbox and its contents are my property, purchased by me over 15 years. I have the receipts. I've already provided them to the investigators at Thorne Solutions." This was news to Thorne, whose eyebrow twitched slightly. Michael hadn't told him he'd spent the day digging through old files in his closet. "But what I want to say is this. This story was never about a job. It was about a scared little girl in the rain." Reducing it to gossip about tools or motives, it misses the point entirely. The point is that sometimes people help each other, and sometimes, much later, they get to say thank you. That's it. That's the whole story. There was a beat of silence. The anchor, thrown by his raw earnestness, recovered gracefully. Thorne jumped in, his voice booming with conviction. "And that is why we stand by Michael 100%. The investigation will be swift, and his exoneration will be public." The interview ended. In the car afterward, Thorne was quiet for a long moment. "You had receipts," he finally said. "I did. You didn't tell me." "I handled it," Michael said, staring out the window. "It was my problem to handle." Thorne nodded slowly. Yes, it was. There was a new respect in his voice, a recognition that Michael was not just a character to be managed. "The story you told out there, about it just being about help and thanks, that was better than anything my communications team wrote." "It was the truth," Michael said. The investigation concluded 2 days later. The allegations were formally retracted. The former co-worker, facing the prospect of a defamation lawsuit from Thorne's legal team and the clear evidence of Michael's receipts, issued a mumbled, written apology. Michael was reinstated with a formal, company-wide email clearing his name. But the damage in the break room was done. The distance remained. He was still the boss's pet project, now also the guy who'd been on TV. The work was good, but the social isolation was a constant ache. A week after the interview, a different car arrived at his apartment. Not a sleek town car, but a modest SUV. The driver handed him an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Robert Thorne and a set of keys. "Michael," the note read, "the press cycle has ended. The debt, as you rightly put it, was never about a job. It was about a life. The job was my solution, but I see now it may have become your cage. These are the keys to a facility called the Grateful Heart. It's a non-profit therapy center for children who have experienced trauma, which I founded after Chloe's accident. We have a small vehicle fleet for transporting kids to and from sessions. Their lead mechanic is retiring. The pay is less than you make now. The hours are flexible. The work matters in a different way. If you're interested, the director expects your call. No obligation, no narrative, just a position for a good mechanic. Robert." Michael held the keys, the metal cool in his palm. This wasn't a grand, public gesture. It was private, thoughtful. It was an exit ramp from the golden cage, offered without pressure. He visited the Grateful Heart the next day. It was a warm, colorful building full of light and the sound of children's laughter. The fleet was 3 vans and a small bus. The director, a retired social worker, talked about the kids, about how a reliable vehicle meant they could get to art therapy, to counseling, to a safe place. She didn't mention Thorne. She asked Michael about engine diagnostics. He took the job. He gave Diane Carter his notice at Thorne Solutions. She understood. There were no hard feelings. The new role was quieter, but profoundly fulfilling. He knew the name of every child who rode in his vans. He fixed their booster seats himself. The pay cut was manageable. The stability from his months at Thorne Solutions had given him a small financial buffer for the first time. He still saw Ben every evening. One afternoon, a familiar SUV pulled up to the center. Robert Thorne got out, not in a suit, but in casual clothes. Chloe was with him, holding a large, flat object wrapped in paper. Thorne shook Michael's hand, a simple, equal gesture. "I was just showing Chloe where some of our foundation's work happens," he said. Then he stepped back, letting his daughter approach. "This is for you," Chloe said, holding out the package. "I finished it." Michael unwrapped it. It was a framed, beautifully detailed colored pencil drawing. It showed a rainy highway, a car in a ditch. A man in a red shirt was carefully lifting a car seat from the wreckage. But in this version, drawn from a child's memory and imagination, the man had a faint, golden glow around him, and the little girl in the seat was smiling. At the bottom, in careful script, it read, "For my angel Michael, thank you for carrying me. Love, Chloe." He had to lean against the van for support. This was the truth, stripped of newspapers and TV cameras and corporate intrigue. This was the real currency of that night, a little girl's memory of safety, rendered in pencil and gratitude. It was worth more than any salary. "It's perfect," he whispered, his voice cracking. Thorne placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We're visiting Alina this weekend. We're going to tell her this story again, Chloe's version." He met Michael's eyes. "Thank you, Michael, for everything. The story is yours now. Tell it or don't, it's up to you." They left. Michael hung the drawing in his small, tidy office at the center. It was the only decoration on the wall. The circles were closed. The debt, in its purest form, had been repaid not with money or obligation, but with respect and a choice. Michael Shaw, the single father and mechanic, had finally been seen, not as a hero or a charity case or a PR asset, but as a man. A man who once stopped in the rain, and in doing so, eventually found his way out of a different kind of storm, carrying a simple, powerful truth. Sometimes, the most extraordinary rewards come not from being paid what you're owed, but from being given what you need to finally walk your own path. So what do we take from a story like this? That good deeds are always rewarded, that billionaires are secretly sentimental. The truth is far less cinematic and far more human. Michael Shaw's story isn't a fairy tale. It's a map of modern complexity. It shows how a single moment of unthinking courage can ripple through years, touching lives in ways no one could predict. It reveals how gratitude, when filtered through immense power, can become its own kind of burden, a gilded cage built from the best intentions. And it demonstrates that the most difficult journey isn't from poverty to comfort, but from being someone's symbol back to being your own person. The real resolution wasn't the job, or the cleared name, or even the beautiful drawing. It was the moment Robert Thorne handed Michael the keys to a different future and said, "The story is yours now." That was the true repayment, not a reward for heroism, but an acknowledgement of autonomy. It was the billionaire finally understanding that the greatest gift he could give the man who saved his daughter was the freedom to write his own next chapter. We live in a world obsessed with transactional narratives. The viral story, the quick payout, the dramatic before and after. But Michael's journey challenges that. It asks us, what happens after the headline fades? What is the cost of being turned into an inspiration? And what does it mean to accept help without surrendering yourself? The little girl who remembered her angel grew up to give him a picture. The man who stopped in the rain found a way to keep helping on his own terms. The billionaire learned that some debts are settled not with contracts, but with respect. Each of them was changed by that rainy night, not because of a single rescue, but because of the long, messy human process of what came after. Perhaps that's the real lesson hiding in this unexpected reunion, that our kindest acts are like stones thrown into a pond. We never really know where the ripples will end. They might bring a tsunami of complication or a gentle wave of connection. They might lead to a mansion's doorway or to a quiet garage where you fix vans for kids who need a safe ride. The meaning isn't in the grand gesture, but in the quiet choices that follow, in the courage to navigate the consequences of your own goodness. Michael still has that drawing. He still picks up Ben from school every day. He still fixes things for a living. The external circumstances shifted, but the core of the man, the one who stops, who helps, who cares for his son, that remained. And maybe, in the end, that's the only part of the story that ever really mattered. If this journey resonated with you, if it made you think about the unseen ripples of your own choices, then do me a favor. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me one small good thing you did this week that no one knows about. Let's fill this space with quiet acts of kindness. And if you want to join us for more stories that explore the hidden connections and unexpected consequences that shape our lives, make sure to subscribe. We have so many more maps of the human heart to explore together. Thanks for listening. Until next time.